Welcome back. The Philippine peso fell to another 11-year low on Friday, its third time this week, having only briefly pulled ahead in the previous session when data showed economic growth quickened at a solid pace in the second quarter. A government-driven infrastructure drive has seen a surge in capital goods imports and accounted for a sizable reason for a trade deficit of $13.2 billion in the first half of the year. Now that puts the nation on track for its first annual current account deficit in 15 years. An unfavorable state of affairs for the peso, especially as traders worry about how the gap would be funded if foreign investment doesn't keep pace. Professor Farrokh Langdana, Director of Rutgers EMBA and Professor of Finance Economics from Rutgers Business School, explains.
So yeah, and the thing is, it made such headlines because quite a few emerging economies' currency is actually getting stronger compared to the dollar. And the Philippines just took a big hit, after such a long time. And I think one reason was that in last December, Philippines had projected a $1 million balance of payments surplus. So balance of payments is basically, the trade balance plus the capital balance, so that's the total of both. So that's one thing. So in December, they said $1 billion surplus. And then suddenly now we have a news that's a $500 million deficit. So the juxtaposition of that forecast with what actually happened was a bit of a shock to people. Mm-hmm. And one reason that this happens is that the capital is not flowing in. So when a country has a trade deficit, it's usually okay when there's a capital inflow. It balances out. What's happening in this case is that you have a trade deficit and a capital deficit too. And so the total is I've got some numbers here for you, actually. And in terms of percentage of GDP, your current account deficit or trade deficit is around 7.7%. And normally you should have a 7.7% capital surplus, the money coming in. But now you have a capital deficit also of 3%. So that's a negative and a negative. So you have a deficit in the trade balance and a deficit in the capital balance. Mm-hmm. And that's what has spooked markets so much.
Central Bank Governor Nestor Espinilla said the country's current account deficit wasn't really a concern because of the quality of the country's imports. What is your take on that, sir?
Yes, actually, he's right about that comment, because sometimes, you have countries' trade deficits or current account deficits, to be precise, getting big when they buy aircraft. You can buy 2-3 aircraft or 2-3 container ships or infrastructure equipment. That's episodic, that's like a one-time only big ticket item. And he's right. Those are actually, they have to be depreciated over the long term because that's productivity improvement, blah, blah, blah. That's good. That's right. What he hasn't mentioned is that the capital balance coming in has slowed down. He actually talks about it, that remittances from workers have gone down, but foreign money coming into the Philippines has slowed down, and I'm thinking partly there's a worry that the housing market is maybe bubbling, it's getting close to overheating.
Benjamin Diokno, the Budget Secretary of the Philippines, and he also talked about the positives of the peso's fall. He said, luckily, a depreciation favors our overseas Filipino workers because they get, their families, because half the population benefit from a weak peso because of the higher peso. Then he highlighted the Duterte administration's policy priorities, the build. He also noted that the country had sufficient dollars in reserve to service its debt with a total of $50 billion.
Our president back home in the US is also talking about a weak dollar and how that's good for business. Mm-hmm. And, that's a very short-term thing. You have to be very careful, When your currency is weak, it's like a whole smorgasbord of things that can make a currency weak. But basically, once currency gets weak, when foreigners are not putting as much money in your economy as they used to. So the rate of capital inflow slows down. If you boil off all the extraneous stuff, that's when the currency gets weak. And in the short term, yes, it might help exports. Yes, it does help some exports, but that's not a long-term thing. And you have to understand, the only reason the Europeans came up with the Eurozone is that they piggybacked on this German monetary discipline that they would not devalue the currency. Because remember, when you weaken your currency, it's very tempting in the short run, but you don't win in the long term. It causes inflation eventually. It's a thumbs down in the long term. And it's just a very tempting thing. And I would tell Trump to also not to do a weak dollar policy, because it's really a sign that capital is not coming into the country at the same rate. So that's what worries me about that statement. Regarding reserves, that's a good thing. What happened in the Mexican crisis and the Asian crisis in 1996 is they ran out of reserves. So what he is doing by making that statement, is he's signaling to foreign investors that if the Philippine currency were to start falling, the central bank would buy it back by selling dollars and selling yen and selling euro. They'd buy back Philippine currency and artificially strengthen it. So that's the message he's sending by the reserves. But the fact that the currency is falling means that the rate of capital inflow has slowed down. And my guess is, no one knows exactly, my guess is it's fear of too much speculation in the housing market. That's what I'm worried about. The Philippine leadership in terms of the central bank and fiscal policy and government, they should actually articulate the fact that, yes, we have a balance of payments deficit. So, they're just talking about current account deficit. That's trade in goods and services. Then you add the current account to the capital account, and that total is called a balance of payments deficit. And that's the real number that business world looks at. And that balance of payments deficit is almost 7% of your GDP now. So it's gone over the I beg your pardon, it's 10%, over 10% of your GDP now. So it's gone over the 10% threshold. It's the balance of payments. It's the sum of the current and capital. That's the key statistic, and they're not mentioning that. I actually had to look it up and run the numbers after I saw your article, because that wasn't on my radar screen. And so they've gone over the 10% balance of payments. So they have to come out and acknowledge it and tell the world they're aware of it, and basically get the business confidence up that they have enough reserves and they're going to work on speculative bubbles and they are in control. And the thing is, this has to be done quickly, because if confidence falls for a long time, it's very hard to bring it up.
Meanwhile, the CEOs of Under Armour, Intel, and the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing followed the footsteps of Merck's chief executive and quit President Donald Trump's American Manufacturing Council. They used Trump's favorite channel, Twitter, to announce their decisions. Under Armour's Kevin Plank posted, "I love our country company. I am stepping down from the council to focus on inspiring, uniting through power of sport." Now, Intel's Brian Stranich tweeted, "I resign to call attention to the serious harm our divided political climate is causing to critical issues." In another post, he said there should be no hesitation in condemning hate speech or white supremacy by name. Hashtag Intel asks all our country's leadership to do the same. Scott Paul of the Alliance for American Manufacturing wrote, "I'm resigning from the Manufacturing Jobs Initiative because it's the right thing for me to do." Trump tweeted in response, "For every CEO that drops out of the Manufacturing Council, I have many to take their place. Grandstanders should not have gone on jobs."
He did not disband those committees. There were two high-level advisory boards. So it's very important to understand that he didn't disband them. The board actually met and they decided they did not want to work with Trump. And they said, okay, we are abandoning you. And so they spoke to Jared Kushner and they said, okay, we are abandoning you. We can't do this anymore. It's an embarrassment. And so then quickly in 10 minutes, Trump announces, "I have canceled the boards," trying to minimize the embarrassment. So just FYI, it was they, and there's a Wall Street Journal actually has an article on that. They were the ones who had a conference call and said, we have to go back to work at Intel and Under Armour and Merck and look at our employees in the eye and say, we are supporting this man. We can't do it anymore. And so that's what happened. And it's reassuring that America is waking up. And I said that the reason corporate America liked Trump was that every seventh comment he made during the election was great, So he talked about deregulation. As an economist, I'm going, yes, it's like a Reagan thing. And then the next 6 comments would be poison, 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 poison. Mexicans building walls and women and foreigners. And then the 7th comment would be great again. Low taxes. And everyone would go, yes. And then again, the next 6 comments were poison. So every 7th comment was great. Corporate America liked him. So he gets voted in, and we have the Trump bump. The market goes up, and he's going around saying, see, I told you I'm going to make America great again. And then you understand after a while that talk is cheap. Tweets are cheaper, right? So what's happening is corporate America has understood, A, that every 7th comment that they were banking on is not going to happen, and B, now that he's a liability. What you're having is that the rank and file are traumatized. People at Merck, we are in New Jersey. Merck is in New Jersey. It's a big pharmaceutical state. And one comment I want to make is that business investment, like capital investment, what businesses spend for R&D and factories and plant and equipment, that's dependent on 2 things. One, but low interest rates by themselves will not make companies borrow money and build a new factory. The big one is investor confidence. Big one. And even for the Philippines right now, what's hurting the Philippines is consumer confidence and investor confidence. Once the fear factor comes in, the leaders of these countries have to quickly and beautifully articulate that they are in control, that they are going to have a plan in place. So in America, business confidence has again gone back down. For taxes are not going to go down. Deregulation is not going to happen. And now we have a liability where he's openly almost endorsing this extreme behavior we saw in Charlottesville, or not condemning it.